The first pop sounded like a gunshot. Not metaphorically, not dramatically. Actually, sharp, sudden, echoing through the cramped kitchen at 7:14 p.m. on a Thursday that already felt hostile. Evan Brooks flinched so hard he spilled cheap soda across the counter, the fizz hissing like it was laughing at him. The microwave rattled violently, rocking against the wall, its interior light flickering as if it, too, was reconsidering its life choices. Then came the second pop. And the third. And then, chaos. Popcorn exploded inside the microwave like it had been planning a jailbreak for years. Kernels detonated against the glass door, some fully popped, some half-mutant, others still hard and angry. The smell hit instantly: burnt butter, scorched salt, regret. Smoke crept out from the vent, curling upward toward the low ceiling of Evan's one-bedroom rental apartment in Cedar Falls, Iowa, a town that smelled perpetually of rain-soaked pavement and second chances. Evan stood frozen, staring at the microwave as if it had personally betrayed him. This was supposed to be his night. The interview tomorrow morning, the real one, not another, "we'll keep your resume on file" lie, was finally within reach. Assistant Operations Coordinator at the Cedar Falls Independent Theater. Not Hollywood, not glamorous, but stable, creative adjacent. A door cracked open after years of knocking with no answer. And now his kitchen smelled like failure with extra butter. He slapped the microwave open. A plume of smoke rushed out dramatically, like the machine was making a final statement. Burnt popcorn rained onto the turntable, the counter, the floor. One rogue kernel bounced off his sock and rolled under the fridge, where it would live forever. Evan closed his eyes. "Of course," he said quietly. "Of course this is happening." Outside, Cedar Falls hummed with late spring life. The sun was sinking slowly, painting the sky in washed-out pinks and soft golds. Neighbors sat on porches with plastic cups and folding chairs. Somewhere down the block, a radio played classic rock, something from the 90s that made Evan feel older than he was. He was 34, which felt fine on paper, and terrifying in real life. His apartment was small but tidy in a trying hard way. IKEA furniture assembled with mild resentment. Movie posters framed slightly crooked. A thrift store couch that had seen better decades. The kind of place that said "I'm rebuilding" without actually saying it out loud. The popcorn incident was ridiculous. Minor. Inconsequential. And yet, it landed like a final straw. Because this wasn't about popcorn. It was about the years before this moment. Evan cleaned in silence, sweeping up popcorn like he was erasing evidence. He dumped the burned mess into the trash, tied the bag too tight, then stared at it for a full 10 seconds before finally tossing it into the bin by the door. He leaned against the counter, exhaling. Failure had a sound. Tonight, it sounded like popping kernels and the microwave fan still whining long after it should have stopped. He checked his phone. No new messages. No reminders. Just the calendar notification blinking quietly. Interview 9 a.m. Cedar Falls Independent Theater. The theater. He smiled despite himself. That place had history. Red velvet seats. Slightly sticky floors. A marquee that buzzed unevenly at night. It was where he'd gone as a teenager to escape his parents shouting. Where he'd taken first dates. Where he'd once, briefly, worked as an usher before life went sideways. And now, maybe, it was his way back in. A loud knock rattled the door. Evan jumped. "Brooks," a voice boomed. "You alive in there, or did the microwave finally win?" Evan groaned. "Come in, Marcus." Doors unlocked. The door swung open, and Marcus Hill filled the doorway like a human exclamation point, 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, wearing basketball shorts, slides, and a hoodie despite the warm evening. His grin was permanent, his energy unstoppable. Marcus sniffed the air. "Wow, smells like a crime scene. Popcorn mutiny." Marcus laughed so hard he had to grab the doorframe. "Man, you always overcook it." "I didn't overcook it," Evan said defensively. "I trusted the suggested time." "That's where you went wrong. Never trust a machine." Marcus stepped inside, nudging a kernel with his foot. "Big night?" "Was supposed to be relaxing," Evan said. "You know, calm nerves. Movie, popcorn, normal human behavior." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You, normal?" Evan smirked. "Fair." They collapsed onto the couch. The TV glowed silently, paused on a streaming menu Evan couldn't afford but still paid for because hope is expensive. Marcus leaned back. "You're gonna crush that interview tomorrow." Evan didn't answer right away. Outside, laughter drifted in from the street. Mrs. Ellen Porter, the retired librarian next door, chatting with Noah Kim, the high school kid who mowed lawns for extra cash. Cedar Falls always felt like that. Overlapping lives, generations brushing past each other without really noticing. Evan finally spoke. What if I don't? Marcus turned, suddenly serious. Then you eat burnt popcorn and try again. Evan laughed softly. Funny how something so small could feel so heavy. The microwave beeped weakly, like it was apologizing. Evan stood up and unplugged it. Not dramatically, just decisively. Tomorrow, he said to no one in particular, I'm not letting something small blow up the whole moment. Marcus grinned. That's the spirit. Neither of them noticed the single unpopped kernel still hiding under the fridge. Waiting. The night didn't end with wisdom. It ended with Evan Brooks lying on his couch at 11:38 p.m., staring at the ceiling fan as it wobbled slightly on its loose screw, clicking in a rhythm that felt uncomfortably like a countdown. Click, click, click. Sleep avoided him the way opportunity had for most of his adult life. Close enough to feel, far enough to miss. Marcus had left an hour earlier, promising breakfast after the interview, the kind of optimism that sounded easy when it didn't belong to you. Evan had showered, laid out clothes twice, changed his mind, then changed it back. Navy blazer, thrift store, decent fit. Gray button down, brown shoes polished just enough to hide their age. The microwave sat unplugged on the counter like a punished child. Evan rolled onto his side. The popcorn explosion replayed in his head, exaggerated now, cinematic. Smoke billowing, kernels flying, that sharp first pop echoing louder each time he remembered it. It was stupid. He knew that. But so much of life's pressure came disguised as stupid things. A burnt meal. A missed bus. A zipper stuck. A popcorn bag exploding when you're already stretched thin. The fan clicked again. Click. Evan closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe. Morning arrived without caring how late Evan fell asleep. At 6:02 a.m., sunlight slipped through the blinds like it had somewhere better to be. Birds argued loudly outside. A garbage truck groaned down the street, metal clanging against metal. Cedar Falls woke up as it always did, slow, practical, unbothered by individual crises. Evan sat up, heart already beating too fast. Today mattered. The apartment felt different in daylight. Less forgiving, every scuff on the wall visible, every coffee stain on the counter obvious. The place looked like a man paused halfway between where he'd been and where he wanted to go. He brewed coffee, cheap grounds, strong enough to feel serious. The smell filled the kitchen, chasing away the lingering ghost of burnt popcorn. He dressed carefully, buttoned slowly, checked the mirror. He looked fine. Not impressive, not hopeless. Fine was progress. Outside, the air carried that late spring Midwest chill, cool enough to wake you up, warm enough to promise change. The sky was a clean, hopeful blue, dotted with lazy clouds drifting like they weren't worried about anything at all. Evan locked the door and paused, hand on the knob. He glanced back at the apartment, at the unplugged microwave, at the trash bin holding the remains of last night's failure. Not today, he said quietly. Evan chose to walk. The theater was only 8 blocks away, and something about moving through Cedar Falls on foot made him feel connected, like he was stitching himself back into the town instead of hovering at the edges. Porches were alive now. Frank Delaney, retired firefighter, watered his lawn aggressively, as if daring the grass to grow faster. Samantha Ortiz, young mom, wrestled a stroller down her front steps while balancing a coffee the size of a small child. "Morning, Evan," she called. "Morning," he replied, surprised she remembered his name. The town remembered more than he thought. Outside Pete's Hardware, the bell jingled as Harold Benton, the owner, stepped out with a clipboard. "Interview day, right?" Harold asked. Evan blinked. "How did you?" "Small town," Harold said, tapping his temple. "Good luck." Each interaction added weight, not pressure, but presence. He wasn't invisible. He hadn't disappeared as much as he believed. The theater marquee came into view. Cedar Falls Independent. Community screening tonight. The letters were slightly crooked. The bulbs uneven. It was perfect. The lobby smelled like carpet cleaner and nostalgia. Movie posters lined the walls, new indie releases mixed with classics that had faded just enough to feel important. Rachel Donovan waited near the ticket booth, clipboard in hand. Late 30s. Sharp haircut. Calm confidence. She wore a blazer that looked intentional instead of desperate. "Evan?" she asked, smiling. "That's me. Glad you could make it." She gestured down the hallway. "Caleb's finishing up something. Coffee?" "Yes," Evan said too quickly, then corrected himself. "I mean, sure, thank you." They walked toward the concession stand. And there it was. The popcorn machine. Large. Chrome. Glorious. Humming softly, lights glowing warmly, bags stacked neatly beside it. It looked like a shrine. Evan swallowed. Rachel noticed. You okay? Yeah, he said. Just memories. She laughed lightly. This machine causes more drama than any movie we screen. The irony hit him so hard he almost laughed. They sat in a small office behind the projection room. Posters leaned against walls. A box fan buzzed in the corner. Caleb Monroe entered moments later, early 40s, beard trimmed, eyes observant. The kind of guy who listened more than he talked. They asked about logistics, scheduling, teamwork, crisis management. Then Caleb leaned back. Tell us about a time something small went wrong, he said, and how you handled it. Evan hesitated. He could give a polished answer. Something rehearsed. Instead, he told the truth. Last night, he said, I burned popcorn. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Caleb smiled faintly. Evan continued. It sounds ridiculous, but it felt like everything at once. Like one small mistake meant I wasn't ready for something bigger. But this morning, I realized something. He paused. I realized small explosions don't mean you quit the whole kitchen. They mean you clean up and keep cooking. The room was quiet. Caleb nodded slowly. That's a good answer. As if summoned by fate, or comedy, the fire alarm shrieked. Loud, piercing, immediate. Rachel shot to her feet. Popcorn machine. They ran. In the lobby, smoke curled gently from the top of the popcorn machine. Not dangerous, just dramatic. A bag had been left too long. Staff scrambled. Customers murmured. Evan didn't freeze. He moved. Unplugged the machine. Opened doors. Fanned smoke toward exits. Calm. Practical. Focused. A kernel bounced across the floor and came to rest near his shoe. Evan stared at it for half a second. Then smiled. The smoke cleared. The alarm stopped. Caleb clapped Evan on the shoulder. Well, he said, I guess you passed the popcorn test. Rachel laughed. Welcome to Cedar Falls Independent. Evan exhaled. Sometimes life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Sometimes it explodes popcorn in your face and asks who you're going to be after the smoke clears. The thing about small towns is that news doesn't travel fast. It appears fast. By 10:17 a.m., 3 blocks away from the Cedar Falls Independent Theater, Diane Keller was already telling Pat O'Rourke at the pharmacy that some young man saved the lobby from burning down with popcorn. By noon, the story had grown flames. By dinner, Evan Brooks had apparently wrestled a malfunctioning machine, soot on his face, bravery in his eyes, while children applauded. None of this was accurate. What was accurate was that Evan sat in the theater's break room, holding a paper cup of lukewarm coffee, wondering how his life had changed direction because of corn kernels and timing. The break room was cramped but lived in. A corkboard full of old schedules. A faded photo of the theater star from 1998, haircuts loud, smiles loud, optimism louder. Someone had written "Don't steal my lunch" in permanent marker on the fridge. Evan liked it immediately. Caleb leaned against the counter. First rule here, he said, nothing ever goes exactly right. Rachel nodded. Second rule, if it does, something breaks immediately after. Evan smiled. I think I'm already qualified. They laughed, and the laughter stuck. That mattered more than Evan realized yet. Evan's first official shift began the following Monday. The weather had turned decisively spring, mid-60s, blue skies stretched thin like they were showing off. Cedar Falls smelled like damp earth and fresh coffee. People walked slower, windows opened, jackets became optional. Evan arrived early, blazer traded for a lightweight jacket, sleeves rolled up just enough to say I'm here to work but I have boundaries. His responsibilities were simple on paper. In reality, they were chaos wearing a name badge. A projector bulb died mid-matinee. The soda machine leaked mysteriously but only on Tuesdays. A local film club argued about subtitles like it was a moral issue. And always, the popcorn machine. It popped too much. Too little. Too loudly. Not loudly enough. Evan learned its moods the way farmers learned weather. And somehow, people noticed. It happened during the Saturday afternoon showing of a retro-animated movie, parents nostalgic, kids loud, popcorn flying like confetti. A boy named Tyler Jensen, maybe 10, stood frozen in front of the concession stand, eyes wide, holding an empty popcorn bag like it had personally disappointed him. Evan knelt beside him. Machine acting weird. Tyler nodded. It stopped. Evan peeked inside. Jammed kernel. Minor issue. He reached in with tongs, flicked it free. The machine roared back to life. Tyler's face lit up. "Whoa," he whispered. "You fixed it." Evan shrugged. "Machines panic sometimes. You just gotta stay calm." Tyler considered this deeply, like it was a life philosophy instead of popcorn advice. Evan didn't know it yet, but that sentence would travel. By week 3, Evan was exhausted. Not the dramatic kind, no breakdowns, no yelling, but the quiet tiredness that lived behind the eyes. The kind you feel when you care more than you're paid to. Rent still loomed. Student loans still existed. His bank account remained unimpressed by symbolism. Some nights, he walked home under streetlights humming softly, wondering if this was enough. If small wins stacked into something bigger, or if they just kept you busy. Outside Rosie's tap, laughter spilled onto the sidewalk. Inside Pete's Hardware, lights stayed on late. Cedar Falls didn't rush success. It marinated it. The idea came from Rachel. "Community movie night," she said. "Free screening. Donations only. Families. Seniors. Everyone." Caleb hesitated. "Popcorn alone will bankrupt us." Evan spoke before he could second-guess himself. "I'll manage it." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Evan thought of the explosion. The smoke. The moment he didn't freeze. "Yeah," he said. "I'm sure." The flyers went up. The town responded. Too well. By the evening of the screening, a line wrapped around the building. Lawn chairs. Kids chasing each other. Seniors bundled in light sweaters. Teenagers pretending not to care but very much caring. The air buzzed. And the popcorn machine groaned. Evan stared at it. "Don't you dare," he muttered. Halfway through the rush, it happened. A strange sound. A sputter. Then, silence. The machine died. The line froze. People murmured. This wasn't funny anymore. Evan felt it, that old familiar tightening. The weight of what if this is where I fail again. He closed his eyes for 1 second. Then opened them. "Okay," he said loudly, calm but clear. "We're doing old school." He grabbed stovetop poppers from storage. Borrowed extension cords. Delegated tasks. Mrs. Keller stirred. Marcus Hill, who had shown up unannounced, volunteered immediately. Popcorn popped in waves. Not perfect, but enough. The crowd cheered. As the movie flickered to life, Evan stood at the back of the theater, arms crossed, heart full and tired. Rachel leaned over. "You realize," she said, "this started with a popcorn explosion." Evan smiled. "Yeah," he said. "Turns out it wasn't the end of something. It was the signal." The applause at the end of the movie wasn't loud. It wasn't standing. It wasn't dramatic. It was something better. It was real. Hands clapped politely. Kids cheered late, confused but excited. Seniors smiled and nodded like they'd just been reminded why they still came out at night. The kind of applause that didn't demand attention, just acknowledged effort. Evan Brooks leaned against the back wall of the Cedar Falls Independent Theater, arms folded, popcorn salt still clinging to his fingers, feeling something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Relief, maybe. Pride, possibly. Belonging, definitely. The theater lights rose slowly, bathing the room in warm yellow. Conversations bloomed immediately. People lingered. No one rushed for the exits. That's when Evan knew. This hadn't just been a movie night. It had been a moment. Cleanup took longer than expected. It always did when people cared. Empty cups stacked. Popcorn kernels scattered like confetti after a parade no one wanted to admit was over. Evan moved through the space methodically, picking up trash, exchanging small comments with volunteers who refused to leave until everything felt right. Marcus Hill swept dramatically, like he was auditioning for a musical about janitorial excellence. "I'm just saying," Marcus announced loudly, "if this whole theater thing doesn't work out, you could run disaster management seminars." Evan laughed. Step 1, panic briefly. Step 2, stop panicking. Rachel joined them, clipboard tucked under her arm, hair slightly messy, eyes bright. "You did good tonight," she said, not casually. Intentionally. Caleb nodded from across the lobby. "You kept your head. That's rare." Evan shrugged, suddenly shy. "I've had practice." They didn't ask what he meant. They didn't need to. By the next morning, Cedar Falls had processed the event and added its own narrative flavor. At Pete's Hardware, Harold Benton told customers, "That young guy at the theater fixed a popcorn crisis with stovetop pans." At the library, Mrs. Ellen Porter smiled knowingly. "See what happens when people don't give up on small things." Even at the high school, Tyler Jensen reenacted the popcorn machine failure with wild hand gestures, concluding confidently, he didn't freak out. That's why it worked. Evan didn't hear most of this. What he heard was his phone buzzing more than usual. Messages. Thank yous. A request from the city council asking if the theater could host a monthly community night. Evan sat on his couch, same apartment, same slightly crooked posters, and stared at the screen. The microwave remained unplugged. He smiled. The meeting happened a week later. Same office. Same box fan buzzing. Same posters leaning against the wall. Caleb closed the door gently. Rachel sat forward. We're restructuring, Caleb said. Expanding programming, community outreach, operations. Rachel slid a paper across the desk. Full-time. Benefits. A title that sounded real. Evan stared at it too long. Rachel tilted her head. You okay? He nodded, swallowing. Yeah, just, wasn't expecting it. Caleb smiled. Neither were we, until you showed us how you handle pressure. Evan thought of the popcorn explosion. The smoke, the noise, the moment he'd chosen not to freeze. He signed. Later that night, Evan plugged the microwave back in. He stood there for a second, popcorn bag in hand, amused by how something so small had once felt so threatening. He set the timer carefully, listened closely, pulled the bag out early. Perfect. No explosions. He laughed, not because he'd mastered popcorn, but because he finally understood what it had been trying to teach him. Life didn't explode to ruin you. It exploded to wake you up. In a small Midwestern town, inside a modest theater with flickering bulbs and stubborn machines, a man learned that failure doesn't arrive as a collapse. It arrives as a pop. Loud, sudden, embarrassing. And if you don't run from it, if you stay, if you clean up and keep going, that pop becomes a signal, not of the end, but of the moment everything finally starts.
Like and subscribe if you want daily dose of happiness and motivation.